Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lois Arthur, and on behalf of the Search Committee, I want to welcome you to today's forum with Professor Chaden Djalali. Professor Djalali is a professor and chair of the Department of Physics and Astronomy at the University of South Carolina. He earned his BS and MS degrees in physics from the University of Paris, France, and a Ph.D. in nuclear physics from the Institut of Nuclear Physics in Orsay, France. In 2001, he was awarded the University of South Carolina Educational Foundation Research Award for Science, Mathematics, and Engineering, the university's most prestigious annual prize for research and scholarship. In 2007, he was appointed to a Carolina Distinguished Professorship in recognition of his outstanding research and teaching. In his interview with the Search Committee, Professor Djalali said, quote, "The arts and humanities speak to the sciences, and the sciences speak to the arts and humanities." He then went on to poetically describe this synergy as a bird that needs both wings to fly. Professor Djalali will open the forum with remarks on the unique value of a liberal arts education in a Research One university, followed by a time for questions from the audience. If you would, note your questions on cards and pass them to my colleagues in the aisles. We'll be walking back and forth there. Now, please join me in welcoming Professor Chaden Djalali.
Thank you very much. Am I alive? Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for the honor of being invited to visit this great institution. And also, I'm very pleased to hear from many people that the weather we have today is typical of this area. So then I'm sold on that, if that's the case. When I was asked to prepare some comments, I started looking, about my own, what I believe about the importance of liberal arts education and its role in a Research One university. And I got so carried away that I had, I looked at this, I like this quote, I like the other quote. So I said, I need a whole semester course to explain this. So I decided maybe what I'm going to do is give you a brief remarks about, first of all, a few quotes that I like about the importance of education by itself, and what's the purpose of education, then go to liberal education and the role that it has, the important, critical, I'm giving you the punchline, vital role that it has in a Research One university. So as I was asking about education, I went back and I looked that, in every culture, everywhere that you go, education is fundamental. And it's part of us human beings being curious about learning things, answering fundamental questions. So I went back, I didn't want to go too far back in time. I went and looked at the Greeks, and I went and saw what Socrates was saying. He says a lot of things about knowledge and education. One of the things he says is, which resonated with me, he said that there are two types of knowledge or education. One is the trivial one, and the other one is the important one. He says the trivial one everybody has, artifacts and things like this. The important one, he divided it in two, and I think it's relevant when we're going to discuss about the importance of liberal arts education. He said the important one are of two kinds. One, the knowledge of the craftsman that knows how to do something is very important for society. However, he goes on and says the most important knowledge or education is how to live your life. So that resonates because it's very important. I think it's at the heart of what we call liberal arts education. Then I went and looked at a lot of quotes about the importance of knowledge and education, and specifically that kind of broad type of education that has allowed for many civilizations to flourish. And being from the Middle East, of course, I went back and looked at the Islamic civilization, and there are many, many quotes. And one that also caught my attention is there is a saying, pursue knowledge from the cradle to the grave. And some of the early in the Arabic civilization, some of the early scholars did that. And you see the result. They made tremendous progress in chemistry, they made tremendous progress in astronomy, and as long as they were doing this, the civilization was flourishing. The moment they stopped, and when literally, they forgot about the importance of a broad education, you saw the consequence. Again, I was looking about some recent quotes. I looked at one from my background, from Iran, and one of the greatest visionaries that Iran has produced lately is Baha'u'llah says, and I like this quote very much, and it's something that my father always had framed in the house and teaching, telling my brother and I that we have to pursue education. It says, regard man as a mine rich of inestimable gems. Education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom. And I can go on with a lot of different kinds of of quotes from many, many different important people about the importance of education, but I'm sure that in this audience I'm preaching to the choir. The important thing is, now we come to the issue of liberal arts education. Again, I went and did some searching on, the origin of this, and of course you go back, there's a lot of discussion among scholars, you go back to Greece again, and you see that liberal arts education was essentially the type of education for free men, because they had a free society and they had slaves. And of course free men, they had this idea that, they had to do logic, rhetoric, geometry. They added, geometry, astronomy, and all these kind of things. And the idea was that for a free person, to have this broad kind of education makes you a better person, makes you, like Socrates said, to know how to live your life. During the Renaissance, you have, again, I went to the French system of education, and this is repeated all the time. And one of the quotes that my teachers in high school were repeating all the time was a quote from Montaigne, and I'm saying it in French. It says, vaut mieux une tête bien faite qu'une tête bien pleine, which we translated roughly means it's better to have a thinking head than a head full of information. Goes back to trivial versus important. And I remember I was in history course in the last year of my high school in France. And again, we were studying World War I. And again, the professors in the French system try to repeat this all the time, this important thing that you have to have a well-thinking head, which means with analytical type of thinking, creativity. And they told me a story that resonated with me, and I'm going to share it. They were talking about Clemenceau. Clemenceau was a prime minister at the time in France. I think he was also president at the time of the end of World War I. And of course, at the time in France, the regime was such, the presidential regime, that you had prime ministers coming for a few months, leaving. The other one was coming afterwards, and they were alternating. And he had two friends. One of them was Poincaré, and the other one was Aristide Briand. Aristide Briand actually went on to get the Nobel Peace Prize in 1926. And of course, Clemenceau, being a typical Frenchman, trying to describe as he can his friends versus his enemies, said about Poincaré, he knows everything but does not understand anything. And speaking about Aristide Briand, who was his friend, he says he doesn't know anything but understands everything. Again, I'm going to stop with my quotes and go to the heart of this thing. This is the purpose, I think, of, if you think about liberal arts education, is a well-rounded education that helps us to find meaning in how to live our lives. And how you do that, you do it by finding what are your strengths. You find it by being exposed to sciences, to arts, to humanities, because that's how this kind of well-rounded education can help you become a better citizen. And let me just tell you something I was reading recently from, this was a survey of many of people hiring in engineering and in sciences, and they were asking them, what are the qualities that you're looking in the people you're hiring? And the top was coming, this is the following thing: analytic reasoning, problem solving, oral and written communication skills, creativity. And if you look at it, those are exactly the goals and the hallmark of what we call liberal arts education. So now, we have a dilemma. I think we have a dilemma because in a society that's confronted with economic problems, unemployment, you hear this more and more. I don't need to repeat it here, but you hear this on TV. I saw even a program on PBS dedicated to the discussion was, do we really need higher education? Do we really need everybody to go to college? Do we really need a degree? Does it help you? And the examples they were giving is a person goes and ends up with $30,000, $50,000 debt, and they cannot get a job. So in our society that's dominated by technology and science, I think that to some extent we've gone too far in reducing knowledge to efficiency. And we see this because employers themselves are saying these were engineers employing them. They were actually complaining about the fact that the engineers get a degree in 4 years, and most of them don't go to a master's degree. They stop there, and they go for a job, and they were saying that they needed those skills that sometimes they don't find, and they have to spend a year and 2 developing those skills. Just yesterday, just to show you the need for this kind of broad education, I was at a hotel, and the only newspaper I could grab was USA Today. But I'm glad I did it, because it was, when I saw this, and the title, I just cut it out. It says, Medical College Admission Test is Expanding its Scope. And I don't know if you're familiar with those pre-med students. If they want to get admitted to medical school, they have to take the MCAT exam. And part of the MCAT, they have to study. So the emphasis has been so far on the hard sciences, natural sciences, chemistry, biology, and physics. And they're changing that. And what I like, let me quote this. They changed it to introduce more social sciences now. And let me read this. And the person doing this justifying says, the signal we're trying to send is while medical school requires this solid grounding in the life sciences, it also requires, and pay attention, I love this part, a broader, more humanistic, social-oriented perspective. Then he goes on and says, these revisions reflect advances in medical technology as well as the stronger emphasis on external influences which liberal arts and humanities students may better grasp. So I don't need to go on and on. Actually, I have, if some of you are interested later on, I can show you. I have pages and pages of quotes from ancient time to Renaissance time to today about the importance of education and the kind of education we're talking about, which is a liberal arts of education. Now, where is the best place to get a liberal arts education? And I think that, again, I'm preaching to the choir, is at the Research One University. Why is that? Because if you look at the Research One University, and I've been saying this to many constituencies today, is that if I emphasize research purely and I go to one extreme, I end up at a national lab. If I take the teaching part and I push it to the extreme, I end up at a teaching institution. So where we are is the perfect place and the ideal place, and that's the unique role that the College of Arts and Sciences with its liberal arts education plays in the Research One University, is to be able to offer this whole spectrum of experience. Now, how to address the criticism that you have in society that I have many articles, my iPad is full of bookmarks, of things that you read saying, what's the purpose of liberal arts education? Liberal arts education colleges or universities do not care about the outcome or the jobs. I think it's a wrong perception. That's not true, because like I said, I can quote what employers are looking for, what medical schools are looking for. I have similar things about what lawyers are looking for. All of them are calling for the type of education that you can only get in liberal types of education that you can get in arts and sciences at the research institution. Now, you might say, well, we have colleges that are arts and sciences, and they're very good at it. But the ideal place, again, maybe I'm biased because myself I'm involved in research, is at the university, not only you can have arts and sciences and liberal art education, but at the same time you have the state-of-the-art scholarship, okay, research, and artistic activities happening. You don't have this at smaller colleges. It's very difficult. Here you have the resources and the funding to do that. So the ideal place, again, this is what I'm saying, and maybe we can discuss together and refine these arguments, is that truly the best place to have a broad education in the context of liberal arts education is within arts and sciences at the Research One University. Now, one thing that we also need to do in order to come to the defense of the cause of liberal arts is that we say this. There's nothing new what I'm saying. Everybody standing here and talking about liberal arts education would tell you the same thing about creativity, about problem solving. The part that we might collectively be guilty of is that we don't follow up and we don't advertise enough what is the outcome of what we're doing. When you hear in the media that arts and sciences or liberal arts degree doesn't lead you to any jobs, that's not true. They take a few cases and make a big fuss out of it. We should maybe get more active in promoting and showcasing all the great successes that people have done, alumni that have majored in arts and sciences. I think that now to achieve success in our enterprise, of course, it depends on the faculty, the student, the staff, the kind of administration you have in the college. That also implies the kind of leadership style, I'm hoping all these kind of questions will come in, in the Q&A sessions. I think I want to stop here and open it to question and answers.
You're a prominent scientist. If you became dean of CLAS, how will you speak to and with and for humanists, artists, and social scientists?
I was warned to expect this question. And I think it's a fair question. And in order to answer a question, before I answer this question, let me tell you that one of the dangers that we have to be very careful, I don't know if it exists here or not, and I apologize, I'm going to take a minute or two because you're going to see how relevant this is. What we want to do within a College of Arts and Sciences, we don't want to have what C.P. Snow called the two cultures. Okay, so because that's very, very destructive. And I was part of a committee that looked at the merging of the College of Science and Math with the College of Humanities and Arts at the University of South Carolina. And for a year, I sat down, discussed in depth with representatives and faculty and students from both sides, heard what the concerns are, and these kind of things were coming up in the sense that we're going to create a large college, and the chances are that if it's a scientist, what's going to happen to us? Us was humanities and arts, and the scientists, believe it or not, were saying, what if we get a dean that is in the arts and humanities? We are doomed. They don't understand what funding means and all these things. So this is going on, and I think it's, in a certain sense, destructive, and it does not lead to any positive outcome. We should not have this culture, this two cultures, or maybe in some cases even I've seen three cultures, because I heard when we were merging that performing arts were saying we have nothing in common with humanities. I'm just saying openly how it was because they don't understand what our scholarship is. Yes, as a scientist, I have, well, if I were to come here and become the dean, I have to educate myself, I have to listen, I have to surround myself by those who are knowledgeable, and you work together. But what I will bring is this dedication. There will not be two or three cultures because that's destructive. We are all part of the enterprise. And when I gave that image of a bird flying, I really meant it, is that if you want to have a successful College of Arts and Sciences, everybody contributes to it. Everybody is a key part of it. Arts and sciences, we can go and can give you examples, are critical in the mission that we have in this education law, when I say liberal arts education. And also one of the important things I didn't have a chance to address is that part of this liberal arts education that's important to us is involvement in society. And that part, I think, I was very pleased to see that it's part of the culture here, it's part of the strategic plan to emphasize this, and we really need the whole spectrum. So I even, to be honest here, I was even asked the question, do you think that the way the dean's office is structured allows this type of communication with all the different constituencies? And I said, I'm open, and I'm open to suggestion how to make the voices of the arts be heard, the voices of humanities be heard, at the same time the voices of sciences be heard. I don't know if I answered the question, but yes, I will have to be open. Anybody who's dean, he or she has to do that.
How secure is tenure in the current environment when increasing financial cuts are leading to entire programs and departments being cut, as currently is happening at UNI? How will you protect tenure?
Protecting tenure is very critical, and I think we have to stand for it because, again, let me go back to the fundamental question, why are we in this business? We are in this business at the Research One University. And when you say Research One University, you mean you give strong importance to scholarship, creative activities, and you give a very strong importance to teaching. So if you combine the two, I don't know if anybody else has invented a better solution than having tenure track and tenured faculty. It's critical. I'm coming from a university who went through the same thing, and I'm very pleased to see that our current administration, the president and the provost at the University of South Carolina, and with the deans, they decided that tenure is extremely important. We were bleeding in the sense that we were losing tenure track positions, being replaced by adjuncts. And I'm not trying to be, I have a lot of respect for adjuncts and instructors. I'm just saying that they were being replaced by another category of instructors. They decided that's not a viable model for a Research One university. And what they did is they said, we're going to stop this. They draw a line in the sand by saying, they took a picture of the situation. The University of South Carolina had 1,000 or 1,050, I don't exactly remember the number, of tenure track and tenure faculty. That could not drop anymore. If tenure lines were lost for any reason in the colleges, and I hope I would, if I come here, I would do the same thing, they will be replaced. Not automatically in the same unit, but they will not be lost. They will be replaced. Maybe I'm speaking because I don't know the situation and the budget, but that's what I would like to do. And the provost at the university decided to add 250 new positions over 3 years. That completely has changed the morale of the university. I can see it. Everybody understands that there is commitment to tenure. But at the same time, we are realistic. We are realistic in the sense that enrollment is going up as a source of funding. When enrollment goes up, it means you have extra teaching. So we need at some stage to come to a fair system, hybrid system, where yes, the priority is tenure and tenure track positions, but at the same time we have to be realistic. We need to have lecturers or senior instructors, provided we don't create second-class citizen, provided it's very clear, it's not a one-yearly contract. We can work something with the higher administration to have a longer contract if they're good, and they have a clear career path defined. But the priority is tenure. And what you do, you just stand up and try to do as much as you can to save it. And you make the case, because if we didn't do it, we will not have a Research One university.
Are you a people person? Not just a brilliant academician, but someone who enjoys talking to and being around people?
Well, I guess you will find out during the reception, but yes, I like to interact with people, and that's one of the main reasons that got me involved. I got involved in university governance, in committees, university-wide committees, because I could have stayed in my lab and not to talk to anybody and do my research, but I discovered how rich experience it was to talk to people from engineering, even the diversity of the fields in arts and sciences. And those of you who try to get to know me, you're going to see that how I get easily excited and I can talk for a long time. So my wife is always, when we go to reception, she's by my side pulling on my sleeve, telling me it's time to.
Suppose the department votes unanimously in favor of promotion for an assistant professor, but your advisory, promotion, and tenure committee is evenly split on the decision. How would you go about resolving the issue?
I would get at least a representative or of the department together with advisory. My first, I've been standing by this because I've served on university-wide tenure and promotion. I was even chairing it, so I saw, for example, every single file for tenure and promotion for 3 years that went through the university came to our committee, and I had to read them. So I know the culture. My first thing is that I trust, this is how you have to start, I trust that the department where the scholarship or the artistic activity or whatever is happening are the ones that know best. This is my first assumption, and this is how I've approached the problem, because they are in the field, and if you don't have a problematic or dysfunctional department, which I'm hoping we don't, it's not the majority, you trust it. Now you have to have a discussion and try to find out why a group of experts unanimously have voted that this person should be tenured, and then the advisory board, I have to see because I'm not used to advisory boards for tenure. Our system goes, just to briefly tell you, goes from the department to the dean. The dean doesn't have, the dean just reads it with associate dean's votes, goes to the provost, and then it goes to the committee of 24 faculty at the university. It's a very unique the system we have at the University of South Carolina. Then we have to find out why. Again, this is the part that I've been trained. We have seemingly a conflict. We have to solve it and find out why. But my first approach going in is I trust the department because they are the experts that know what's happening in that field.
Global perspectives and knowledge are increasingly important to a liberal arts education. Beyond study abroad experiences, how should an institution like the UI continue its efforts towards comprehensive internationalization? I'm interested in curricular initiatives in general and internationally, in science curriculum in particular.
In science curriculum, okay. But I think it applies what? I'm going to answer this question. The internationalization is also something that all the different universities are doing it. We're doing it at our own university because the world has become really a small village. There is no guarantee that one of our majors will even be employed or work in the United States. They might end up in other cultures. It's our duty to expose our students to the world as it is, to other cultures. It opens their mind. It gives them advantage later if they want to be hired. So internationalization is a very important thing to do. Now, as you know, we are doing all these different things. You know, we have the general education things, we have the requirement, we have the service learning, we have involvement, we have internship. Now we're adding this component. We have to be very careful because there is a limited amount of time that the students have. So we have to work this very carefully, and the way it has to be done, I think, essentially, I was told there is a vice provost for international affairs, so I'm looking forward to meet with him and talk about this. In science particularly, I have quite an experience because I'm working in what we call big science, large collaborations, 200, 300, 400 people from 50 different or 40, 50 different countries. I travel all the time. For example, next week I'm going to be for a week in Japan. And so in the sciences, I've seen how to establish partnerships, exchanges, because I'm involved, you know, in different kinds. So we've had actually, I was instrumental in getting exchanges done with South America, particularly with Colombia. My wife is from Colombia, so I go regularly there. And every time I go there, I give a talk, I give a recruiting talk. We had a memorandum of understanding. We have exchanges, students come. It was difficult. I was not successful in getting students from the US to go down there. And in partly was due because of the perception, at the time it was right, that Colombia is a dangerous country to send people. But that was very successful, and we're trying to develop this. I visited the Middle East because I was going as an expert to evaluate the programs in Oman. I stopped in Abu Dhabi, and there is a lot of potential to do this kind of exchanges. We should encourage, but it should not be limited to the sciences. To some extent, I think in other areas it might be easier. People studying languages and cultures should be encouraged to go and spend a semester. And on the other hand, I think we will win, all of us, by making connections at university level or maybe at the college level to have other countries send their students here.
If the best place for liberal arts education is a Research One institution, how do you answer the familiar parental complaint that they're paying high tuition to have their students taught by teaching assistants?
Well, I would like the students not to be taught by teaching assistants. And let me tell you, at least we've achieved this in our physics department. It cost us a lot. All our courses are taught by faculty, tenure track faculty, tenure and tenure track faculty. I know it's not easy in all different fields to do that. The only places where graduate students are teaching are the labs or help session, and I haven't had any complaints from parents. Now, I know that that's not easy to do across and that should be seriously. That goes back to the first question, that we really need to address this question to have enough faculty to do that. Or if we don't have faculty, go to the hybrid model that I mentioned. Courses, introductory courses, I know that sometimes that's not possible in English department, or it's not possible in math departments. I don't know here, but I heard this in the University of South Carolina, that they're forced sometimes because of the increased enrollment to put graduate students, advanced graduates teaching the course. And I fully understand why parents are complaining about that. We should not, as much as possible, not do that. That's where you go to really hiring highly skilled, motivated, with terminal degree lecturers. They're passionate about this, and passion is what we want. And they decided that their passion is teaching. They're not interested in scholarship. Well, we can have a very nice marriage, okay, because we all benefit from it. We respect them, we hire them, we don't make them second-class citizens. They have a clear path for promotion and recognition, and they help our enterprise, and then we will not have this kind of complaints that students are being taught by graduate students. But I understand that some cases we have no choice.
How important is it for you to protect developmental awards / sabbaticals for faculty?
It is important. You know, I didn't know about this today when I was meeting with the chairs. The issue was brought that sabbatical is their issue, and I also heard that, I don't know if it's the legislator or the Board of Regents trying to question. I think it's critical at our institution. I will try as much as I can, working again. You cannot work by yourself. You have to work together with the other deans and the higher administration. I think it's vital. It has been part of academia and higher education for many years, and I think we should try to defend that as much as possible. Not only sabbaticals, I think in the cases when it's possible, I've been, and you know, our current dean also is encouraging this, which is very pleasing, you know, in our administration, is people can buy time out, or they can apply for internal grants that allows them to take a semester off to write a book, to go and develop, I don't know, a play, to go and develop a piece of music, to go and do research. I think that's critical. That's part of the mission, because again, we are research one, which means we have to do research, scholarship, artistic activities or creative activities to the best of our ability, so we have to have all the possible tools. And sabbatical, development grants, buying time off are critical. But they have to be justified. It's not just randomly given out.
An Iowa legislator asks you, quote, "I understand about the relevance of the arts, but the humanities? Why do I need someone to tell me what to think when I read a book or watch a movie or listen to a piece of music?" End quote. What do you say in response?
Well, I try to, this question was asked me in the previous meeting, and I said, first of all, I will count to 10, not to be rude, because you don't gain anything by being rude, especially to a legislator. I think that, yeah, I've encountered many people, not only legislators, but I've encountered many people with actually higher, you know, educated people in a sense, but not in the broad sense, that maintain the same thing. I think what you have to do is, if it's just a provocation and the person is not interested in having a discussion, then I will not pursue that more. But if you see that you have a room to discuss with them, then you mention the importance of the humanities. And starting with the humanities, I will go, one example that comes to my mind is the importance of the word, either written or spoken. A legislator knows that because they're using it all the time. And they might not know it, but they got that skill about how to use a word to influence people or how to write something. They got it, even if they don't know it, from the humanities. Okay. Now, when it comes to a piece of music, it's, no, I said, you don't need somebody to tell you. That's not what, you know, because they have this perception that arts or performing arts is people who just sit there, they don't do creative, original work, they're just there writing something, telling others what to think about it. That's not what arts is. There's part of it, but that's not all of it. There is original creation, and yeah, I agree with that. No, I don't need anybody to tell me this if somebody doesn't want it. I like somebody to tell me what this piece of music means, because that generates a discussion and I learn from it.
There's always a proposal for a tuition freeze working its way through the state legislature. Are tuition hikes, continuing and increasing ones, a necessary evil?
Well, before answering the question, we have to say that you know, higher education is having a problem. For example, even I look at your tuition, you have, compared to us, a reasonable tuition. Our tuition in University of South Carolina, if I'm not wrong, I think is roughly $3,000 more than yours for in-state. And the reason we've gone that way is because our state appropriation is down to 9% of our budget. So you're cut between a rock and a hard place. What do? You want to keep the standards, you want to keep the excellence of research, and especially of teaching, So where are the resources? Okay, so the easy place to go, and people do this, is to increase tuition. But there's a limit, because if you continue increasing tuition, then accessibility becomes an issue. If you're a public institution, then you're just excluding the majority of the people from your state. So it's not evil per se. It's a necessary thing to do, but it should be a last resort. I'm dreaming, I know that's not going to happen in my lifetime. The ideal thing would be suddenly the legislator, because maybe somebody tells them about the humanities and the arts, suddenly touches their heart and they say, you know, we've gone the wrong way. Let's bring the money appropriation back. But I'm dreaming there.
What's your experience in mentoring and advocating for graduate students as researchers and teachers in their own right? And how would you position this within a perpetual funding crisis environment?
First of all, mentoring, I benefited from it tremendously. I benefited when I was trying to learn how to become a better teacher. I benefited from tremendous, I had the good fortune to have fantastic mentors that helped me with my research, helped me with how to put grants forward, helped me about which committee to choose and serve at the university. So mentoring is very important. Now coming back to, because I benefited from it as chair of a department, I've been trying as much as I did. In my 8 years, I've hired close to 12 faculty members, and I've been actively involved with my senior faculty in mentoring, making sure they're successful, helping them go for funding, helping them go to, telling them this conference is better than the other one because you get exposure, do this, do that. And we've been, to a certain sense, very successful. Coming to graduate students, I've had a lot of graduate students, and in our group, there are 5 faculty members in experimental nuclear physics. We really do care about the students. We have mentoring, and the reason we know that is because we have funding for 6 graduate students maximum, and now we have 12, and we're turning away many other graduate students that are in other groups and hear how we're treating our students and want to join us. And we feel so bad about having to tell them that we cannot support them. So one thing that we did is our graduate students, when they do research with us, they sign the papers with us. When we have APS meetings, the American Physical Society meeting, or any other meetings, we send them. And I could go, but I prefer to send a student. We mentor them. We tell them, to give a presentation. With those who are interested in teaching, and it goes we follow up. And then, for example, those that finish with us, most of them have gone to prestigious universities as postdocs. And we continue being in touch, because once they go for 3-4 years as a postdoc, what touches us is that in the group is that when they apply for a faculty position, for a research position, they still come back to us and ask us for advice, and we write letters and help them. Now, that said, I don't remember the last part, but it's a fundamental thing to do, because I think at universities, of course, our first duty is to undergraduate education, because that's where the largest enrollment is and the source of revenue. However, doctoral education is fundamental to the survival of a Research One university.
Why do you want to be a dean?
I don't know exactly, but
Why do you want to be a dean?
the more I hear about the problems, you sometimes wonder. The reason I want to be, because I've always liked challenges where you see the potential to really work closely with a lot of bright people, interesting people, and achieve things in the fields. And I think that I'm really outcome-oriented and goal-oriented. For example, if I look at so far I've been talking about what's happening here, I'm assimilating a lot of information. It's been a very tough day today. It's going to be a tough day tomorrow. But I'm accumulating all this information, and so far it's been very positive. I see the tremendous potential. I see this as a unique place to not only continue in excelling in many, many areas, to be an advocate of liberal arts education with the legislator, with the outside constituency, but I think at this institution, with this kind of comprehensive College of Arts and Sciences, we can do even more. I was thinking about, maybe again, I'm dreaming, I think we can be advocate, we can actually if together we do this, to show and be advocate for the impact of liberal arts education, and be actually quoted in an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education, something that the same way that this university says it was a first as a public university to allow women to come, which is a great thing. It was a first, I think, to give, remind me this, I'm confused about, African American first, is it lawyer or, I don't remember. It has been. Why can't we also be among the first to to go back and fight the battle that liberal arts education and convince the whole state and the country that this is how we do it? And not only that, go one step further, follow up about the product we're producing, be a little bit more managerial type of things like businesses do, or like for-profit institutions are doing cleverly, and we aren't doing that. Showcase where they're going, and tell whenever there's an article saying, what's the purpose of a liberal arts education, you immediately can show the data that no, 86, 90%, I don't know the number, here they are, they're successful, this is what they've done, and reclaim the right and the importance of liberal arts education.
Is it realistic to talk about strengthening the college in a time of declining funding, or will your job involve mostly damage control?
If the job was mostly damage control, I will just go back to the hotel, ask for the airline to change my ticket to tonight and leave. I'm not interested in damage control. And I've seen that we've gone through more severe budget cuts than here at the University of South Carolina. And I saw that when creative people and then creativity came, it was amazing. It came not only from faculty, administrators, faculty, staff, and students get together, put their brains together. This is, if you think it's its highest concentration of human capacity to its best. So we should be able to do this. I think times are tough. We're not, sometimes, the first answer to any problem is we can solve it if we had money. Yes, I agree with that. If we had a limited supply of money, we can solve any problem, but that's not the case. So let's be creative and find other things. Yes, you can strengthen things because I've seen it happen other places. Now, how fast would it happen? It depends on how we work together creatively and move forward.
Suppose you are approached by a parent who is unhappy because his child, who was a biology major, has decided to study music and to become a conductor. What do you say to the parent?
Ooh. Because that would be parental advice, and I don't know if it's... Well, you try to go back and ask about... it's a delicate question. A delicate question because I've gone through a similar thing. And I had a student that was taking physics courses, because the parents wanted the student to go to medical school and become a doctor. And in reality, what he wanted to do was become a film producer. So first of all, with the parents, it's difficult. What you have to, I don't know, they will come and ask you why my son is doing this or my daughter or the child is doing this. First of all, well, you have to go and ask them, what's the best for them. It's just essentially it's not a discussion between dean and parent, it's a discussion between two individuals where the well-being of a child and the happiness of the child, you start at that level. Because if I start trying to defend music versus thing, I'm bringing academia, and I think that issue is not an academic issue. It's an issue of parents trying to respect the choice of children. So it's more, I don't know if I'm answering the question, it's more like a person-to-person discussion. And I think to try to say, and myself, I don't know what I would do. I have a 13-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old daughter, and I don't know what I would do if suddenly she comes, I might be dreaming, I want her to be a scientist, and she might come and says, I want to do dance. Honestly, I don't know my first reaction as a scientist, but I would say, at the end, I know that it's in the interest of my child, the happiness of my child, and they should be supportive. And then when the dean comes in by saying, if that's what they want to do, I will say, we have the best program in the country. So this is why your child should go. Don't take him away, okay?
You've had a very successful career as a teacher, scholar, and researcher. What makes you want to give that career up in order to become a full-time administrator?
I don't think I'm giving up that thing. I think that becoming an administrator is an evolution in the way I've done things, because it's not saying been there, done that, I need new things. Is that I see this as a continuation. We have in academia and in society, we have a lot of these choices. When people say, you're doing this, it means you're abandoning that. No. I think the strengths of going into an administration coming through the ranks and having been in the classroom, having struggled and having overcome obstacles and tried to be a better teacher, having gone and tried to have a paper published, having gone and tried to get a grant approved and have been told several times, no, 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 and not giving up and going until you get it, I think makes you, when you come to administration and you try to help and mentor others, gives you, first of all, an edge in the sense that you know what people are going through. You can be a good mentor. And I see this as going in administration, I don't see as giving up. Of course, there is a little bit of giving up of that, the excitement of being in the lab and doing things. But I think there are enough other excitements. So you're doing it through the excitement of the faculty and helping and creating an environment where scholarship, research, creative activities flourish. You're getting the same high without doing it yourself. I don't know if, it's not giving up. I see this as a continuation.
What weight should collegiality play in tenure and promotion?
A huge role, because right now, in the last few weeks, I've gone through one of the most challenging crises of me being chair of a department, and it had to do with a lack of collegiality in a tenure and promotion. It's very critical. And I'm not going to go into more details because this is confidential and going on, but I was mentioning this. I said that when you have collegiality in any group, you have productivity. And as chair, for example, sometimes I see the department, when we are all on board and doing great things, it runs smoothly. And actually, I was able to do some of my research, stop by, sign a few things. But as soon as collegiality went away and you had one or two people starting making problems, then 100% of my time for maybe a week or 2 or 3 was entirely taken in order to solve a problem that should haven't been there in the first place. So it's critical. Now, there has been a debate. Some units have included collegiality as part of the criteria to judge somebody going up for tenure and promotion. I don't think that has a place there in writing, because it's very subjective and it can be used as a tool to deny or to vote no on a tenure.
How big a piece is fundraising for a dean, and what experience have you had with it?
It's a huge part of fundraising. For a following simple thing is that if you look at funding from those of us who go and get funding from NIH, DOE, or that is flat. From now on, I don't think that NSF or DOE is going to get any. We're not going to get any more funding, and we know why. The federal government is struggling with the budget situation. And state appropriation, we already talked about it. It's gone down the drain. So, but you need to have support, and so fundraising is becoming really a very important part of creating resources as endowed chair positions, as endowed fellowships for students, as named lectures, and if you can dream, why not? Big buildings named after whoever wants to be named. If they give the money, we put any name they want on the building. It's important. So for the dean, and I was talking to some of my colleagues and mentors who have been dean before that interact, they said that it used to be 20% of their time, some of them it has gone to 30% of the time, and some of them are doing 50% of their time development. And it's critical and has to be done. Now, my experience, of course, as chair, I haven't been dean before, but as chair is limited, because most of the development, the culture is that the development is essentially has been centralized and done by the dean's office, and big donors has been done by centralized by either the foundation or the president. But I see a change in the culture, and I was sharing this with the chairs, is that more and more I see the dean's offices getting the units involved and taking some ownership in the development. And as such, in the department, whenever there were opportunities, I was able to be called. I was ready to go and convey the passion of the things that we were doing, the great things, and that resonates with donors. We were able to secure many years ago $1 million donation that funds fellowships. Recently, I got a phone call from a dean's office. I think I would do the same thing. They had a donor who's interested in giving some amount, substantial amount of money to the physics department, and they got me involved, and I like that. I like what the dean's office is doing. They got me involved, and they told me, where do you think is your strengths? Where do you want the money to go? And I was ready because the culture is such that since they told us to take ownership and be ready to answer these questions, I had a list of priorities, and as soon as I go back, I will hear about what's happening. So I had experience. I know the meaning and importance of fundraising, and I'm looking forward. And I was told, which is attractive here, that the development officers are doing an outstanding job in this college. So I'm looking forward to work with them if I were to come here.
So for our last question, how do you respond to the frequent charge that the educational climate at a Research One institution leaves many students academically adrift?
First of all, as I hear this, I don't know if this falls into the perception. One side of me said, well, I need to look at the data. I want to see if this is just urban myth, perception, because there's a lot of perceptions. I need to see the data. The data I'm looking at, and again, this is coming from compilations and surveys and evaluation, doesn't say that. Okay, it says the contrary. So you might have a few. Now, when that happens, we have to find out why and how to address it. But I don't subscribe to that. I really need to see the data and sit down and say examples of, give me an example that this actually has happened. I don't know whoever asked the question if they want to be more specific or not, but I don't subscribe that the students are adrift. Now, if they mention that in the sense that some universities or some colleges do not care because the emphasis is on research and do not care about students finding their way or finding, what's their passion in life, then that should be addressed. That's our fault. We need to have advising. We need to have, continuing things, get involvement. But like I said, liberal arts education and colleges of arts and sciences have to marry this big, general, well-rounded education. It's not taboo to say we're doing this. At the same time, we're caring about what kind of jobs our graduates are going to get.
So Professor Djalali will give his closing remarks, and then we invite you all to join us in a reception, which will be just down the hall to the left on this same level.
So my closing remarks are going to be relatively short. I sent from somebody coming from outside and studying your university and the College specifically of Arts and Science. I can tell you I'm really impressed. Recently, I've been looking at other colleges, and and I have colleagues in other places, and even ours. They're all great colleges, but they don't have the breadth of what you have. You have really great places. It has tremendous potential. I know it's hard. I've heard, I'm sure I'm going to hear more tomorrow about all the problems that we have with sabbaticals, with tenure, with space, with increasing teaching, and they're common everywhere. But I'm sure that whoever comes here as a dean, he or she will have really a great time working with great faculty. And I think that I haven't met yet, but from what I'm reading, I haven't met the provost or the president, but I'm sure they would confirm what I think is that there is a genuine interest in making this place a greater place. And hopefully we will get through these tough times.
Thank you, Professor Djalali, and thank you all
Thank you.
for coming.